All right, good morning. I am just now getting to school. I have about maybe 15 to 20 minutes before my students come in. But I wanted to talk about something that is really controversial. And it's been on my heart for the last day or so. And I don't quite know how to start it. I do feel like it's a conversation that needs to be had, but it is not often talked about in communities, right? Let me just sit this up right here. Um, but it's one that I think we should talk about and that we need to talk about more often. And that is the discrimination that people face within their own communities, particularly as it relates to education. On yesterday, I was able to meet another micro school founder, went to her school, beautiful. She had interns from a local college. Now, for those of you who've been following my journey, you know I live in a major metropolitan area, and I work within an urban context. So, with that being said, I mean, it's the place, the city is a melting pot of a whole bunch of different things and people too. But I work with predominantly middle class on down families. I intentionally make my program available to low income families. Like that is really where my heartbeat is. But if you are developing a program towards that group, generally it's hard to make it sustainable and successful because they simply can't pay tuition. And my program is still dependent on families contributing. But anywho, I went to this micro school and I was able to talk with this college student who is doing her internship there. And as we discussed, she told me about her journey, in which I love to hear people's stories. And she went to a public school that, well, is not as new now, but she happened to be the first graduating class. And again, this school, a big to do was made about it. It is a public school. It was designed only for girls. And what she told me that I did not know, and it was in a district that I used to work for, that I still have lots of friends and connections there, right? But not being there, I didn't know the ins and outs of all things. I know the politics that go on, but I simply didn't know like in detail because I'm not there. So as she was telling me about her experience at this school, she said that it was good, but it also came with a lot of bad because when the school made, it was a big to do. It is named after a very prominent civil rights leader, and so when it was designed, it was new. You had lots of people flocking there, and again, it was a public school. And so what she said though was that there was a lot of kids from very well-to-do families. And basically it was a school within a school. And the thing that hurt me to my core was when she said, "Did you know I had to fight to get into AP classes?" And then she said, "And I had to prove that I belong there every day." And she said certain students were made to feel as if they were superior to other students. And obviously, she was a other student. She felt like she had to fight all the time, I guess just to be seen and to be heard. And as she was explaining this to me, like my eyes just welled with tears. And I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I mean, I could believe it, but I couldn't believe it, right? Because I've really never heard anyone express it this way. I knew that we face discrimination within our own cultures, whether they white, black, or anything else. I have to put some lotion on. I forgot to put my my moisturizer on after I left my serum on. But what she said, I mean, what I said to her immediately, I said, "Your story sounds no different than the African American children who has attended predominantly um, others or white schools within our area." And that was always their complaint about being seen, about having to fight to be in some of the same classes and all of that good stuff. And it just hurt me to my core that you will have a young girl, young student who attended a public school that was probably 100% of her own culture, and her story sounded no different from what other African American children experience in predominantly white settings. And I know this to be true in some contexts, not necessarily with everybody, right? But it happens enough, and I don't think we talk about it enough. Um, I am very sensitive when it comes to this because obviously I'm African American. I live predominantly around um, African Americans, and I work in that context, right? Now, my, I guess, environment, friendship is pretty diverse. I attend a diverse church. I have diverse friends, and the context in which I work, I mean, obviously, I love working with Black children. That's not usually the adjective that really encompasses my work. Like the DNA of my program is people with disabilities. So whether you're white, Black, Hispanic, or anything else, that's the thing that binds us in my program. Although I do work with predominantly Black people because that is who is around. And I never felt the need to feel like or to market a program based on cultural relevancy. One, because I honor that period, because that's who I am, and that's who most of the kids that I serve, the backgrounds that they come from. However, I have felt the sting, the feeling different, even among my own culture, because of my own experience of being an individual with learning disabilities. I've worked in the context of where I had to fight people within my own culture to get kids who have disabilities what they need, right? And I think the thing that I hate that we don't talk about more is that although there is a racism problem, or there are people who are racist, I don't believe that that is our overarching bigger problem in America or even where I'm from. I think it's easy to say that. Now, let me say this. There are institutional things that is extremely racist to the African American community. It simply is. Like, we couldn't have the history that we have in America and everything be kumbaya. We want that, right? But it isn't. And I don't want anyone listening to this to feel as if I'm saying that we don't face these issues. But what I am saying is that I think the bigger issue that we face in America is class. And we don't talk about that enough. And as you can see, I'm an emotional person. I get emotional because I think that's the thing that eventually it's going to harm all of us. Like, I open my program up to, again, everybody, as you can see, and I'm not doing this on purpose. That young man has been a member of our school, but I open it up. I try to market to others as well. And a lot of times, I don't want to say that maybe don't feel comfortable, but again, that's a part of it. Like, most people want to be somewhere where they feel comfortable, where they feel seen. And the sad part is now where we are, I see a lot more Caucasian people and maybe Hispanic people, but I also see even the class divisions within them. Where we were previously, the homeless problem was more African Americans, but where I am now, the homeless problem is way more white people, that I see. And I see more poverty within that group on this side of town that I saw on the other side of town. But it still has been very difficult for me to kind of penetrate that group, for them to see and know what our program is, for them to entrust their children with me, right? But again, I feel like, whether you're white, Black, or whatever, within each of our groups, we create subgroups, and we do discriminate against people based on class. And it's sad. Like, it is so sad because, again, it's what I felt like forever when I did work in the public school system. At this time, I'm not sure what else I can say about this other than to really get it off of my chest, because when I heard that young lady's story, the pain in her voice, I connected so much because I connected to my own moments of discrimination, of being a girl who had a learning disability. I went to a HBCU, and I will not say that my experience was there all the time because I hid my disability. But the one time that I did try to share it, I definitely was met by someone who I felt judged me as if I did not belong there. And it was the last time that I tried to share, and I worked my butt off to prove every day that I did. And, when I look back, the biggest thing that I regret about my own experience in school was the fact that I did not self identify and get the help that I was entitled to, and that I forged through it alone. And I did it, and I did extremely well. Being a person with a disability, I still describe school as pretty easy for me, but I had to work overtime to get the grades that I got. And so as she was just talking, it connected to my own trauma. And I want to say I can't believe, but I can believe that we are still treating people differently. And it's so sad because, Black people are at a point now where they're like, well, you know what? If I'm not invited to the table, I'm going to create my table. But if you're going to create a table, don't perpetuate the same discrimination that was shown to you based on class. And again, I think the biggest problem that we face in America is a class. It's not a white, Black, Hispanic. It's about the haves and the have-nots. And I am grateful. I'm nowhere near to being rich, but I am rich in resources, and my family, we do quite well. That is why I am able to show up the way that I show up for my students, because I'm not dependent on the amount of money that I make from my school. It is just extremely frustrating that in 2024 that I'm hearing stuff like this. And it is extremely frustrating that it's not talked about more often, not just in the Black community, but all communities, because I really think that this is what Martin Luther King saw towards the end prior to him dying. That is why he started the Poor People's Campaign. And the Poor People's Campaign was not about Black people, it wasn't about white people, it was about poor people who were being discriminated against because of their class. And if we don't keep that at our forefront, like, America is already being divided. And it's sad that we will track kids into those same situations instead of giving them the shoelaces that they need to pull themselves up by the bootstraps. And my fear is that people will perpetuate the things that was done to them on other people. Just, it looks different. It may not be the color of my skin now, but it's because of where my mother works or where my father works, or just because I come from a single parent household. And I just wish that Martin Luther King had just more time to explore this. I wish that we would have another Martin Luther King to come about to explore this, because I really foresee that as being the biggest issue in America, but even in education. And I don't know where I would be without a good education. I think that is why I feel so compelled to do education the way that I'm doing it, even if it's one person, even if it's two people, because it was the catalyst for me to change my own economic status. I grew up in a rural area, and we were poor. Now I look back, I always laugh. We were rich in land. That's what we had. And I think because of that, that came with pride or whatever. So we, even though my mother was minimum wage, and I can still remember, I think she was like making $3 an hour. I'm from a single parent household too, but we were able to do as well as we were because we own our land. And still she knew that education was the way, right? Matter of fact, she was a high school dropout as well. Her mother died when she was like 5 or 6. I mean, you know what happens to children when their parents die that young. And we're talking about America in the South back then. So for me to be able to grow up and experience life the way that I am, I wholeheartedly know that it was because of education. And I can't phantom other people not given the same opportunity or having to face still yet traumatizing stuff that they have to fight through to prove that they belong anywhere. I guess I don't know what was the whole purpose of this video. One, to start this conversation. I don't know. What do you think about it? Have you seen it? For those of you who watch me and you're interested in starting a school, like, how are you ensuring that you're not making these groups and keeping them to you and yours? Are you trying to make an avenue where people who may not even be able to afford what you give can still come in and experience it? You know, at the end of the day, you can't build a program off of the backs of poor people when you're expecting them to pay, right? And that's another thing. There are so many resources for poor people that I've seen a gross negligence in the money that is assigned to them by the people who are bringing the programs to them, right? And then again, it just causes me so much frustration because I know the passion that I show up with. I know what my mission is, and I know how well that I do it and the results that I've seen, but yet still not get the support. It is frustrating, but it is just even more frustrating to see that all of this money could be poured into a program in the 2000s, not like early 2000s. We're talking about like mid and even now that so much money can be poured into public education to build these programs to target these individuals that are at a lower socioeconomic status, but yet people who have the resources, people who are financially well off, they come in and they milk those opportunities, and then they make the kids who are there who don't fall into that same class have to fight and to just cause trauma in their lives. It is frustrating. Anyway, let me go ahead on and get started with my day. I will talk to you guys later. Let me know what you think in the comments below.